Dear friends, welcome to the next session for Information Security Fundamentals. In the previous session, we were talking about the various threats that can be a challenge to the personal computers or which can attack the computer systems. So, we were talking about identity threat, and in today's session, we will discuss some of those threats in a detailed manner. So in today's session we will first start off with the malware. So let's get started. So malware is basically a malicious software which can spread through emails and also through unauthorized download, for example the mega upload case. In our previous sessions we have talked about the mega upload case, where an application or a software automatically gets downloaded along with a movie or certain software that we intend to download. Now this malicious software gets downloaded into our machine without our knowledge but gets installed with the privileges of the user. Now when we are talking about the privileges of the user, it essentially means that not all softwares can be installed in our computer system by anyone or any person or any entity randomly. It needs to have permissions from the user account or from the user himself. Now, these malwares, whenever they get downloaded, they automatically utilize the privileges of the user to get itself installed in the machine, but without the knowledge of the user. So, the user does not know that using his permission, a malicious software is getting installed in his system. Now, this malware can attack the system in two different modes. One is the active mode, where the malware can directly go and change or destroy the data in the system. Now this is very dangerous for any data or information which is stored in the system, because it will lose the integrity of that particular data or information which is present in the system, and it is violating one of the major security goals. The next mode can be a passive software mode, where the malware will observe all the transactions that we do and communicate with it without our knowledge. For example, there might be certain email that is there in our account, and the malware will go and read it and respond to it without our knowledge in a manner which we do not intend to reply to that particular email. Or it might get the information from the email and utilize that information to do some other activities which might pose a threat to the system. The second point can be it creates random packets and keep pumping into the network to create trouble for other computers in the proximity. This relates to the denial of service attack, or flooding the entire network with irrelevant and useless packets so that the network becomes slow. The third passive software attack is through a malware is it replicates into a USB, and when that USB goes to some other place within the network, it can go and infect that system. For example, now we have two systems, one is connected to the internet and one is not connected to the internet, and if we want to download some research paper, we will use the system which is connected to the internet. Once we have downloaded the research paper into the system, we will copy it using a pen drive and move to the next machine to read it. So when we want to transfer it to the next machine, we will use a USB in order to copy that research paper and transfer it in our required machine which is not connected to the internet. Now the malware has the potential of getting itself copied into the USB, and whenever we use that USB in a machine which is not connected to the internet, it will get itself installed in that machine as well and retrieve all the information which is there in the system, and it can move back, or it will be sending all information via the same USB to the previous machine in order to use those particular information which is not connected through the internet. So malware is basically like a spy which is there with you and you have downloaded it unknowingly and it has been installed, but it will be using your privileges or the user account privileges in order to perform all the activities. So it becomes very familiar to the computer system as it has user privileges, and the system or the information which is there in the system will be compromised or the data integrity will be lost. So next type of threat is the keylogger. It is also known as keystroke logging. It can be both hardware and software. It records all the keystrokes done by the user, because when you type in the key, it goes to the driver, a keyboard driver, and then basically goes to the memory. Now this keylogger will basically target that driver and it will get all the information. So whenever you are using a computer system, so you will be typing in certain details of your credentials like username and password, etc. So when you are typing in the keyboard all your credentials, all the keystrokes that you have typed in will be initially redirected to the keyboard driver, which will straight away go to the memory. The keyboard locker attacks directly this particular keyboard driver or sometimes the memory. However, this driver is attacked initially and it will derive all the information that you have typed in as your username and password or any other such credentials which are important to you from business perspective. Now this can essentially lead to an identity theft, because your username and password might be stolen whenever you type in using that particular keyboard and using a keylogger. Now the question is, if keylogger is that dangerous, then why we are keeping that application in our system, or why should we at all install that application or install that software in our system? Because it has the potential to take away all our credentials. So it is not exactly necessary that we install it. However, keylogger comes with a number of benefits. So the number of benefits involves that whenever you type in a keystroke or whenever you type in a key, it means that it will have all sorts of recording or all sorts of activities that are done in that particular using that particular keyboard. So whenever an employee is not typing in his keyboard for half an hour or 45 minutes or maybe 1 hour, the manager or the boss can actually keep a track of whether that employee is working or not. It is also possible that he is working on something productive other than typing into his system. For that purpose, there might be some other productive work as well for him which does not need any keyboard strokes, but still it gives the potential of recording the employee's activities, whatever he is doing with the keyboard or whatever he is typing into the system. So, and whenever these things are being recorded using that keylogger, we can also keep a track of whether he is up to some malicious activities or not. So if there is any sort of threat or security issues coming from that particular system or that particular keyboard or keystrokes, so we can send an alert immediately. So this is the advantage of keylogger. However, the major disadvantage is that if this keylogger is compromised, it directly attacks into the keyboard driver and will be able to retrieve all your credentials. The next attack that we will be talking about is the rootkit. The rootkit is very much inside the kernel, and not inside the kernel exactly, it is very much close to the kernel. So it is into deeper levels of the kernel and are very close to the kernel of the operating system. Now kernel is the core of the operating system, which is capable of handling all sorts of processes, memory management, etc. So we will be discussing in details with kernels in our subsequent sessions. However, for us to understand as of now, it is actually the core of the operating system, which will be taking care of different types of processes and their management, and also various parallel processing, multitasking, etc. So basically, when we are talking about this rootkit is an attack which is directly done on this kernel. The rootkit is essentially to conceal the running processes. As I talked about, the kernel behaving like a process management system. So there are different processes running in the operating system. So which process should be given priority and which should be not, all those things are decided in the kernel and are accordingly scheduled. The rootkit will be to conceal those running processes. So whatever the processes are running, it will simply conceal them, or it will simply conceal the file or the system data, and it will help the intruder to maintain access to their system without detection. So the intruder can directly enter into the kernel and look at the different processes that are going on in the background without the knowledge of the user or without anyone's knowledge, because the rootkit will simply conceal whatever processes is running, and it will create a black box view for the outsiders except for the intruder. And rootkit essentially promotes stealth and works for a variety of operating systems. So we have to understand that this is like stealing of any information or stealing of any data related things or file and system data. So this rootkit is always promoting stealth, and it will irrespective of the kernel or irrespective of the operating system, it will work unanimously in any given environment. However, as already mentioned, they are very, very difficult to detect because of the concealment. Next, we are talking about mobile malware. So mobile malwares are basically phone viruses or mobile phone viruses. So basically it is not very significant as compared to PC viruses, as they are widely written. So it is not significant due to the ratio being very low, as the total number of devices with virus in comparison to total number of systems in the network gives us the ratio. If we go ahead and see that there are a lot of mobile devices or mobile phones which are running in the market with a lot of malware as compared to their number of total productions, so hence the ratio is very, very low as compared to normal PCs. So because the attacks done on personal computers are very, very widely written, so hence mobile malware is there, but it is not as significant as the PC attack. The next we will talk about is the combined attack mechanism. So in combined attack mechanism, different vulnerabilities are combined together in order to attack the system. The first is the speed at which the malware spreads, which is very fast, plus a lethal payload. Lethal payload means that the payload which the packet is carrying or the software is carrying is very, very dangerous to the system, which means it might go and destroy the information which is there in the system. So if we combine this dangerous mechanism with a very fast speed at which the malware spreads, it becomes a combined attack and it becomes really dangerous. The next is spamming with already spoofed websites. So this is again two different mechanisms combined together. One is spam and the other is spoofing of websites. So if we have a spoofed website, let's say gmail.com is written as gmmail.com. So this is a spoofed website and we will spam any system with this particular spoofed website, then it becomes a combined attack. Now a Trojan horse can be there which will keep installing that software that can actually clog the network by creating a lot of packets. So this is another combined attack mechanism where there will be a Trojan and it will keep on installing a particular malware. This malware is responsible for flooding the entire network with unnecessary packets. So we are combining Trojan horses as well as malwares and then creating a attack by combining these two particular softwares. Trojans which are installing at backdoors, this is also an example of the combined attack mechanism where the Trojan will be downloading a software which will open a door to the data store or information store of the system, and from there it will steal information. So all these are types of combined attack mechanisms. So there are much more to it. We will discuss this eventually in our subsequent sessions. However, for us to understand as of now is combined attack mechanism relates to the combination of two different mechanisms, two or more different mechanisms in order to conduct that particular attack. The next we will talk about is the patch management failure. So patches are those changes or those updates that we essentially make to the hardware or software in order to address a vulnerability. So 90% attacks generally take place with known vulnerabilities. Suppose a company has launched a software with some vulnerabilities, and if they have asked us to update it in order to remove those vulnerabilities and we do not do it, or we do it in an improper way, then it becomes difficult to remove those vulnerability, and those loopholes or limitations or vulnerabilities still remains there with the software in our system. It does not scale well and it is not cost effective. Now patch management fails because we have certain softwares or certain applications in our system which has vulnerabilities and we need to update it. Now updating sometimes costs updating a software might be costing more, or it might be expensive. So hence we will not do it, or we generally refrain from do it if our work is solved using the current version of that particular software. So if it is not cost effective, we will not update it. Hence there the patch management fails and the vulnerabilities still remain. The second important thing is it does not scale well, which means that if we have a hardware which is not compatible with the upgraded software, then also the patch management might fail. The third important point why patch management fails is because there is maintenance money and we need to pay to a software on a consistent basis for them to release the patches. So if we have maybe let us say we have installed an application, so we have to upgrade it or update it for any latest or new releases. So if we are upgrading or updating it for any latest releases based on certain amount of money, then it becomes very expensive for us as and when the update or an upgrade is launched, because this maintenance money might be from a few thousand rupees to lakhs of rupees. Certain floating licenses for certain softwares may go up to 10 to 15 lakhs per annum. So this becomes a huge expenditure for the company or for the personal user as a whole. So it is difficult to bear so much of money to update a system for maintenance or to install the patches into the system. So this leads to the failure of patch management, and because of the application of the patch, the productivity is lost. Now when we have an upgraded version of that particular software, it essentially means that we have to learn all those new things which are there in that upgraded version. Now this might involve a lot of time for the employees or for the users to invest so that they learn those particular new things that are there in the software, and learning of those new things will be using up a lot of time, and there the productivity will be lost because the employee will be spending most of his time in learning apart from doing something productive. The last point is technical installation cost, which is quite heavy. Now for certain patches which involves hardware installation, it becomes quite an expensive affair, because not all technicians or not all engineers are well equipped with that particular might not be equipped with that particular technology and that particular hardware, and he or she might need a lot of training in order to install that particular software or hardware. So this will be quite an expensive affair because it involves the training cost as well as installation cost of that particular component. So under these circumstances, the patch management, which is actually needed in order to address the vulnerability, fails. Now there is another term which is known as vulnerability exploitation, where operating systems, which are the conventional operating systems like Windows or Mac OS X, are under consistent threat or constant rate of being attacked. And this attack comes in through different desktop tools which are not connected with the operating system. That means people download these desktop tools. The attacks also come through alternative web browsers or media applications and Microsoft Office applications, for example. And a hacker can basically use this to get access to the system and essentially create a vulnerability exploitation. Now vulnerability, as the very word suggests, it means that there is some loophole or some limitation associated to the system, and the attackers will attack this vulnerability through various desktop tools which are basically not connected with the operating system, which already comes intact when you purchase a particular computer, but we install it additionally, or we download it and install it additionally. So whenever we are talking about such type of desktop tools, we mean that they are the media applications, the Microsoft Office applications, etc. So these tools are useful to us, no doubt, but there might be certain vulnerabilities associated with it, through which the intruders might get access to the system and might create this exploitation. It is not always true that people target this vulnerability to create something harmful, but it might also be so that these vulnerabilities are exploited to an extent that there is a passive attack to the system. Next we will talk about ransomware. So ransomware is a particular malicious software or a malware which actually demands ransom to restore the already damaged or already stolen files. So what happens is the malware in your system basically will go and encrypt the victim's data. Suppose you have a malware in your system, it will directly go into the system and it will encrypt your data so that you yourself cannot access those data or information which is stored in your system. it will also not only encrypt your data but go or lock the entire screen. So you will not be even allowed to enter into your own machine. So this will create an availability issue because you will not be able to log in or you will not be able to find anything. So even if you log in somehow, then also the files will be encrypted and the encrypted things will not be seen to you. So you will not be able to work with it. That is why it will create an availability issue. The system will no longer be available to you for actual use, even though it is there physically present. And after this situation is created, it will start demanding ransom for its installation or for its restoration. So after the malware has attacked that particular system, you will be demanded some sort of money in order to decrypt your own data which has been encrypted by that particular malware, and to unlock your own screen. So this actually sometimes is called cryptovirology, and in modern term it is called ransomware. So basically this entire ransomware technology or ransomware is known as cryptovirology, where the malware will start demanding money. The attackers through the malware will start demanding money in order to restore your files. So this is all for this session. Thank you.